a slightly forward angle, and you'll see when John does his exercise the activation of the muscles. So as he shrugs the shoulders up, he's hitting this part here. So he's hitting this top part of the muscle, but also this part, and that's the biggest mass of the upper trapezius there. So you can see that angle he's using, keeping his elbows straight and just shrugging backwards and up. And he's hitting right this top part here. So we're using the Smith machine, so he doesn't have to balance, and he's just pulling against the weight without weights loading on here. You see that he's fixed against the bench, so his body's not moving, and the bench is on a high incline. And that's a perfect position for developing the upper trapezius. Now, a lot of people, when they use dumbbells, they'll make the mistake of rolling backwards like that. And the trapezius doesn't do that. All the trapezius does is elevate the shoulder girdle in that position. You notice his head fits forward and down as well. That brings in a greater range of movement with the trapezius. If he brought his head back, he'd get trapped. So he brings his head forwards and you get a better range of movement in that position. So that's the reason for using this angle. Charlotte will demonstrate another alternative way of doing this, but using dumbbells. So if you've not got a Smith machine handy or a barbell, you can use dumbbells. So off you go, Charlotte. Again, you see the muscles really standing out there at that angle. That's a perfect angle, that, for it. That's good form. Nice, good hold and a good stretch. Okay. So this is another alternative of the shrug that we've just shown you. The reason for doing this on the calf machine or a squat machine, as we see, is to take the grip out of the equation, so you don't have to grip any dumbbells or barbells, and you can concentrate on a push just with his shoulder girdle. So John's pushing up with his shoulder girdle, elevating his shoulder girdle, holding at the top, trying to get his shoulders up to his ears and stretching down. Up, hold, and then down slowly, pause at the bottom. So there's no jerking, it's all using just his upper trapezius muscles. As you can see, we've got the bands on here for added resistance. So as he elevates his shoulders higher, the resistance gets harder. So it's working that what we call the inner range, and it's offering more resistance as he shrugs higher. So it's a useful adjunct to your training. You can use that as an alternative. Obviously, weights will be loaded on this bar here to offer resistance, so he doesn't have to grip. So we're going to move on to bicep training now. Now, when you think about the biceps, when you look at it anatomically, there's two heads to the muscle. Okay, there's an inner, shorter head and a longer outer head. Now, the inner, shorter head doesn't attach over the shoulder, but the longer outer head does. So we'll just show you where those are now on Charlotte. So this is the inner head here. Okay. And if you turn around, Charlotte, face the mirror, peek that one up again. That's the outer head there. Okay. So you can see the peak on that one. Now that outer head passes over the shoulder, and in order to fully contract it, she needs to have a elbow elevated or a shoulder elevated to get a peak contraction there. So we're going to arrange the exercises to train it this way as well. Now you can see another muscle there standing out, and that's brachialis. That's the muscle that's deep to bicep, so we're going to hit that as well. This muscle as well, brachioradialis, which is a big thick muscle on the forearm, we're going to hit that as well. So we can hit the two heads of the biceps, brachialis and brachioradialis, using 3 exercises. Okay? Now the first exercise is a fixed elbow curl, very often called a preacher curl, or a Scott curl after Larry Scott that invented it. Basically the elbow's fixed and you're working from, not quite from 0, but a slightly flexed arm to 90 degrees plus, okay? And that's going to tend to work the short head, the inner head, okay? And then we need to get the arm in an elevated position or incorporate shoulder flexion to emphasise the maximum contraction of the outer head, which is shown when she was facing the mirror. It's that peaky type part of the bicep. So we'll start off with the preacher curl now. Well, this is the preacher curl. This is a hammer stand machine, So again, the elbows are fixed. There's a nice decam on the outside, copied from Nautilus. Now with this one, always keep the wrist in a flexed position, slightly flexed. Never let the wrist go into extension, otherwise you're going to strain your wrist. You can see she's going past 90 degrees there. Pause in there, so just come to about there. Keep your tension on there, that's it, that's great. And then out. So she's working that inner head mainly, and she's also working the brachialis muscle, which is a deep muscle to biceps. Gives you the thickness to the front of the arm. So although this is done on the machine, you could do this exercise using a barbell and what we call a preacher bench, again where the elbows are fixed. Now, if you're going to use a preacher bench, don't use a straight bar, you can use a cambered bar, so it's the one with the slight bend in the bar. You can see that this bar is at an angle as well, and it just takes the pressure off the wrist and the forearm. So you can either do it on a machine like this or on the barbell. This next exercise is a Nautilus machine, and it's designed mainly to emphasise the outer head, because as you notice the elbow's in elevation. So as she contracts the muscle, brings it in, notice a peak on the outer head contracting there. That's a good movement. And then down slowly. Just stop before her arm straightens out, and then peak in again. Nice peak contraction there. And again, the wrist is in a slightly flexed position. With your wrist in a flexed position, you tend to engage the bicep more anyhow. Again, nice slow movement, controlled, pause at the end, squeeze and contract at the top. So you're maximising the tension in this outer head of the muscle. This is a way of adapting the preacher bench exercise that we did at first for the outer range to try and emphasise the inner range now. So as he peaks, contracts now against his forehead there. Stop there, John, that's it. And then peek in. And we've now got resistance bands offering resistance to that top end of the range. So it's going to emphasise that inner range. And it's a good alternative alongside your normal preacher bench. So this is one way of adapting it using bands. So this is another alternative using a pulley to work the outer head and get the peak contraction. So again, if you're going to do the preacher bench first, either the hammer strength machine or the barbell, you could incorporate this one as a second exercise. Okay, so the resistance is now on that inner range towards, as you're flexing towards the forehead, coming back, pausing there, and then squeezing in, and emphasising this lateral head. You notice the elbows are being flexed and the shoulders are being flexed forwards. And he's aiming to peak, contract just over the top of the head. So and get a good hold at the top. Again, using a cambered bar to take the pressure off the wrists and the forearms. So it's that angled bar rather than a straight bar. This next exercise, moving on, is working the brachioradialis, which is this muscle here, and also the brachialis, deep muscle to bicep. And this is a reverse curl, so he's in more of a pronated position, but what we call a mid position. And the best way of engaging that is to use a rope, and he's going to use a pulley now. So leans back a bit, keeps the body still, flexing up to the top of the chest, holding at the top, slowly down, pausing at the bottom. And that strongly engages this muscle here and the one deep there. I prefer using a mid position rather than a fully pronated grip, because when you fully pronate, you put a lot of stress on the extensor tendon here, at the back of the elbow. So we're trying to avoid that. And also the brachioradialis works better in a mid position. So this muscle works better in that mid position that he's holding. It engages more strongly. So this is an alternative to the last reverse curl that we did with the rope, and this is with the elbows fixed using the preacher machine. So you can use the hammer strength preacher machine So you've got weight loaded on there, and if you do the movement, Charlotte. So it's a mid position again, fixed elbows, up to the chest or the chin. I usually try and get them up to my chin, and then down slowly. Pause at the bottom, slightly flex, not completely straight, and then come up from there. So you're keeping tension on all the time on the muscle. So it's working the brachioradialis muscle here, and the muscle deep to biceps here. And this again is working the brachioradialis muscles here, and the brachialis muscle deep to the bicep. So it gives you that thickness to the bicep, and also thickness to the top of the forearms. So this is the final muscle group now, the forearms. A lot of bodybuilders don't train the forearms, they think they've done enough, obviously with all the gripping they do and that, but I think it's good to specifically train them, especially if it's a weak body part. So we're going to do wrist flexion, which is a wrist curl. So you see what John's doing now, he's dropping the stirrup right into the fingertips and then flexing right up. That way you're engaging all the long flexors as well and the wrist flexors. So it's a long finger and wrist flexors you try and engage. So it's a really strict movement with a pulley. So the pulley's pulling down, good peak contraction, and it's working all these flexor muscles down here. And again, you do the same principle that you apply to all the other body parts, and just train it once a week as well. So that's the wrist flexion, and then the other part of the movement is wrist extension, which works these long extensors of the wrist. Next exercise is the opposite group of muscles on the back of the forearm, the extensors. And so this is how we do that. So we fix the forearm flat against the bench and extend back, and then pause at the bottom. Very often overlooked by bodybuilders and that, but again, something you can specifically work on if it's a weak point. So in this video, the truth about bodybuilding, the scientific approach, you're going to see two models, two proteges of mine that have been training on this principle for a number of years. The first one is Charlotte McGill, and she's a former Miss Universe 2 years ago. She's going to move up into a category called athletic figure, where they need a little bit more muscularity, but as you can see, still feminine, that feminine look. So this has all been attained using this approach of weight training. And John Ramsey, who's won a few titles already, and he's a future champion. He's been training with this system as well, and gained 20 pounds of muscle in the last couple of years. So you can see that it works. So I think a good idea now will be to show Charlotte's physique off. She's going to be competing tomorrow in the Miss UK. So I'll take you through a few compulsory poses that she does.
you.